And then I'm working on these at the moment. It's a series of landscape paintings, but they're actually, the images are found in ceramic pots, like maybe several hundred-year-old Chinese pots or Japanese pots, and then with a macro lens, I zoom in. Well, I have a magnifying glass, and I zoom into a tiny area that might be just some detail of a bit of paint mark somewhere, and it might be to do with it might be the color of a figure or something. But I just look to find something that can suggest a landscape in a certain style of landscape painting, and then photograph it, and then enlarge it and print it onto ceramic tiles, so just like bathroom, kitchen tiles. So it's sort of putting it back onto the same material it was on, and then passing them off as landscape paintings. So this is the second gallery, the gallery I'm now with, who represent me, called Limoncello. If the space looks familiar, it's because it's actually the Russian Club gallery space that I used to run. I then gave that particular room up within the building to Limoncello because I didn't want to run the gallery anymore, and their space wasn't very good. So they rent it from me now, so I'm sort of kind of like my gallery's landlord, which is a bit an odd situation, but it works out fine. So these, they're about 5 meters long, and they're based on little Vietnamese bamboo toys, the little balancing dragonflies, which I think are based on a thousands of year old idea of one stick with 2 sticks tied in a certain place or balance like that. So I just made a version to fit the space, which is quite big, about as big as this room. So they sort of interlocked a bit. So they're balancing. And to do that, there's a lot of weight in the front of the wings, so they're incredibly heavy, but they give this sense of being incredibly light, so it's quite deceptive walking through the space. So these sorts of projects take a long time to make. I think this is probably sort of 6 weeks solid making these. The chairs were developed over a long time, but in tandem with that, I still make works that respond very quickly to something I might see, or so there's different things going on usually. This is a piece called Looking at the Scottish Lake, Dreaming of Mount Fuji. And it's a photograph that was on a friend's wall, framed, that their grandfather had taken. And obviously it's up the other way, and then I just I took the work down, removed the picture, turned it upside down, put it back in the frame, put it back on the wall, and then gave it a title that had various connotations of how one thing could be another thing if you allow it to be in your mind. So. This was, let's say this time last year I was in Japan, and I had, well, unfortunately I had socks on that said L and R for left and right, so I knew which my feet were. But I had them on the wrong feet, and then being Japan and being in a traditional house and then there not being any seats and me being slightly awkward Westerner. I had to sit with my feet out, cross my legs, and then read my socks. And they were sort of weirdly the right way, even though they were the wrong way. So I photographed it, basically. But for me, it summed up quite a lot at that time, because for a Westerner, the culture in Japan seems, particularly for a British person, if they drive on the same side as you do here, everything seems like you understand it, and then as soon as you scratch at the surface, it doesn't make any sense. And there are rules, and you just can't. As a Westerner, it's very hard to understand those immediately. So this image, although it's quite joking, but it did sum up quite a lot of those cultural differences that I was experiencing at the time. And when you travel abroad, there are going to be cultural differences, and when you make work, you have to make quite culturally sensitive work. It's very difficult, and it often I found that you kind of meet with a brick wall when you suggest an idea, because it might seem fine to me in my experience and my culture, but it doesn't always work. So it's quite a sensitive thing to do if you ever get the chance to go and work somewhere else in a different culture. It's you have to be quite aware. It's tricky, but this was a piece. It was back in London, but there's still a slightly different thing. But and it's an outdoor magazine rack. So the actress on the cover of the magazine just curled her lip down. I don't know how, but and then the band across the middle is a wire band that holds the magazines in the rack so they don't blow away. And I just noticed as I walked past that it looked like it was holding her lip down. So there's this blurring of realities which I really liked just about that part of the photo. So I just photographed it. So as I say, some of these works take weeks and months to make, and then some of them are really instant. So around the same time that I was setting up and running the Russian Club Gallery, making these works, I was beginning to get invited to do residencies, international residencies. And then you have to think a little bit differently about how you can make work in a new environment, often with no tools, no materials, maybe on a very low budget, often with no studio in a different culture. How do you make work? It's not always as easy as just going over and carrying on doing what you're doing. So I started developing some techniques for this, and there's sort of two main ones. See which comes up first. So one was a way of getting to know a city when I arrived in a city. So this one is actually started in London when I went to the Royal College to do my MA, my Master's. And I've never lived in London before, although I'm English, but I've never lived there. London's quite different to the rest of the UK. So I started early on. I just started exploring the city, but then how do you do that? I didn't want to do it as a tourist, and I wasn't a sort of worker as such. And I'd only just begun living there, so I set myself really simple tasks. And this is here. It's a roll of electrical tape, just a really standard roll of tape. So I would re-roll the tape around a cylindrical thing that was a similar size to the way the tape was rolled. So I'd reconfigure it. And I didn't really know why I was doing this, and they take about 15 minutes, 20 minutes to do really well. But then I'd photograph it. I'd just leave it there and then move on. And I did these for several months. I would just go out with a bag of these tapes and a camera with a slide film. And I would walk around until I found something that I wanted to connect with in a way. And then what happens is a lot of interesting things happen if you're in a busy city and you stand really still for 15 minutes. It's not something you often do, and if you really focus on one thing, and then also the way people react to you, so it actually becomes almost quite political work because people take offence. So because they're going to work and you're rolling a piece of tape around a pole. So I got quite a lot of, some people got very angry with me, which is interesting. I wasn't hurt anyone, but and then other people were curious, and obviously most people ignored you or just looked, gave you a funny look. And then these were shown in on a slide projector, so there were 80 of them because there's 80 slots in a carousel. So they were just using that sort of logic to finish the project. And there's only 3 there. And then as it develops, you start to just play on the different things that are happening in this particular way. Because the bike theft there, for example, there's so many locks just left there, but with no, the bike's been cut off or something. So it's just playing on those sort of symbols that you find.